Welcome into a Tuesday, November 26th edition of Daily Faceoff Live, streaming live on the DFO YouTube, where we are looking for your inbox questions. Drop them in with the hashtag askdfo. The show is presented by Bet365, the largest sports betting platform globally. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk and Frank Saravalli with you. Frank, how are you doing here on this beautiful Tuesday?
I'm good. Counting down to Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday of the year. I mean, food, beer, football, 4-day weekend built in. Is there anything better?
Although the football schedule is garbage on the Thursday.
Don't talk about the Green Bay Packers like that.
That's okay. Fair. That's a totally different conversation. This is a hockey show, and we got 30 minutes of straight hockey talk coming your way. Rob Rossi, our friend from out in Pittsburgh, is going to swing by in just over 10 minutes, talk to us a little bit about whatever is going on with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But first, let's talk about last night a little bit, Frank. For the Colorado Avalanche, they got struck by lightning 8 times in that hockey game. It was an absolute beatdown. 5-1 Bolts coming out of the first period. And if you want to sum things up in one video, Miles Wood coming off the ice in frustration, breaks his stick, and it shoots right back and hits his head coach, Jared Bednar, in the head. Just absolutely nothing was going the Colorado Avalanche's way last night.
I have no words for that. That is epic, and it kind of reminds me of a story about how Ray Ferraro tells this story from back in the day playing with the Atlanta Thrashers. He was in the locker room. They were all in there during an intermission, and their coach, Kurt Frazier, is tearing a strip off them. He takes a stick from the stick rack and shatters it, and it wings off a wall or a pillar and ends up hitting him right in the head. Ray was like, I was benched before that. Not anymore after that. He felt so bad. So not to make light of the Colorado Avalanche situation, in some ways that kind of sums up their season so far. Really good, some really good players, a team that's gotten healthier, and absolutely zero goaltending. .870 team save percentage so far this year for the Avs. Alexander Georgiev isn't it. And Justus Annunen, I have a hard time believing that he's going to be it. We know Capo Kakinen, you got one shot, one game, 20 shots, 16 saves, 4 goals against. You're back on waivers, back up to Winnipeg. So it's been tough for the Avs to really find a solution in net. And I don't know where they turn from here. Just listen to how dejected Nathan MacKinnon is after the game.
Yeah,
just, I guess, what did you think about Ron tonight? I don't know.
You guys have gotten off some slow starts, been able to bounce back. Was there just something that kept you guys from being able to get your legs going?
I thought our legs were going. Is there anything in particular you're going to look back on this one and see? We should have done this or we should have done that? I don't think so. I don't know what to say.
Do you guys just kind of throw this one away, not much to take out of this one?
Yeah, I thought we had a great road trip. It just sucks it ended like this. Everything went in and we couldn't do anything to stop it.
Credit to our friend Jesse Montano and Gorilla Sports out in Colorado. He's been on the show before. He does great work, but he says that everything went in. And how about this? Alexander Georgiev, 12 starts this year. He's been pulled twice, allowed 4 or more goals in 4 other starts. 6 of his 12 starts, you can look at it and go, those were bad. Justus Annunen, not much better. 9 starts, he's also been pulled twice. Another start with 4+ goals. 33% of his starts, bad. As MacKinnon said, everything goes in.
So that's 9 bad starts if we're keeping score at home. I mean, we are only 22 games into the season. That just can't happen. And look, they've been through hell and back with the players that they've been missing to get through to the other side of it for the most part now, depending on what happens with Gabe Landeskog, to then not get any stops. Like it's unforgivable. So you can talk about the Carolina Hurricanes and their current goaltending situation and Spencer Martin now being thrown into the fire. I think there's no more urgent goaltending situation in the NHL than the Colorado Avalanche.
John Gibson, Mackenzie Blackwood. Is there someone out there who you look at and be like, that's the guy, go get him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Avs can afford John Gibson, so I think you could probably cross him off the list. Mackenzie Blackwood has played pretty well, and he's someone that we heard Carter Hutton talk about yesterday, really needs to see a ton of rubber. He could definitely see that in Colorado. Look, I think there's a ton of different options. Why not go get Dan Vladar from the Calgary Flames? He's been excellent so far. He's on our trade targets board. The Flames would be just as happy to go with Cooley as the backup to Dustin Wolf for the remainder of this year. Second round pick. If you are Chris McFarland, that's what it's going to cost to get Dan Vladar out of Calgary.
With the way things are going right now and hearing how McKinnon was talking after the game, I think it's a no-brainer to go pay that price for someone. Not good in Colorado. I mean, hey, they're in a playoff spot, but almost similar to a team out east in the New York Rangers. You're in a playoff spot, but just things don't seem to be vibing quite right there. Rangers have lost 3 in a row. The Avalanche, even though they're 7-3 in their last 10, frustration starting to mount. Let's talk about a little bit of news we got off the ice last night. Frank, Phil Tomasino, the former first-round pick of the Nashville Predators, is going to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for a 4th-round pick, a relatively small deal when you consider the assets going either way. And we'll talk about maybe does this signal some more activity for the Pittsburgh Penguins in a bit. But for Nashville, Frank, I mean, is this the start of a big sell-off? They lost again last night, 3 wins in their last 10. They're 7-12-3 on the year. Is this just the beginning, or is this maybe them trying to jolt the team a little bit?
No, I think this has more to do with Phil Tomasino being a guy that was clearly a square peg in a round hole, needed a fresh start, and the Preds figured, hey, let's get something instead of putting him on waivers and potentially losing him for nothing. So that was part of the equation. I don't view it as connected to anything else. However, if Barry Trotz is going to step up here over the next, number of days or weeks, it, in my view, isn't going to be to sell off. I'd be surprised if that's the case. I think the Nashville Predators are in the market to try and boost this team and fix some of what ails them, particularly down the middle at the center position. It's difficult to do at this exact moment in time, given the lack of centers available. But I mean, just look at this depth chart right now. It's Juuso Parssinen has played in the center role. Fedor Svechkov is a call-up and a highly thought-of prospect for the Preds. He's being given an audition. They're trying to find solutions to fix this team down the middle. But Ryan O'Reilly is a great player, but on a true Stanley Cup contending team, Ryan O'Reilly at this point in time is a 3C. So they've got to somehow find a way to balance out the center and wings. And Barry Trotz has been examining the market. We reported on that a few weeks ago, but it's not going to be to sell off. They're pot committed with the way this team's cap is structured.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation for Barry Trotz. Also yesterday with the trade of Tomasino, there were some interesting kind of tweets floating around going back at all the Nashville Predators first-round picks that just really haven't worked out in the organization. Askarov traded at 22. Phil Tomasino now traded. Eli Tolvanen was waived a couple of years ago. Dante Fabro was waived earlier this year. And then you even go back to the Kevin Fiala and Seth Jones trades. Like, I mean, how many of these moves are in the name of them desperately trying to find that franchise center in Nashville and not being able to do it? You flip Fiala for Granlund, then whatever it was, 12, 14 months later, they're selling Granlund for a 2nd-round pick, Seth Jones for Ryan Johansson. He ends up getting bought out, traded to the Colorado Avalanche. Like, there's just this search for a franchise center, Frank, it's gone on for a decade, and it's costing them because they keep wanting to double down and trying to go out and find the guy.
And I get it. I understand where they're at. It's no one said it would be easy, but it doesn't mean you just start selling pieces off.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see. Again, like, you look at this roster right now, how much different is it with a legitimate centerman at the top of that lineup? And it makes you think, again, not that the Jonathan Marchessault contract's a bad contract, but what if you would have went and just spent that money on a free agent centerman instead of always going after the shiny winger and the shiny toy? I don't know. It's an interesting question. And Nashville is in a predicament right now, sitting 2nd last in the Western Conference.
To me, by the way, and just for clarity, like, it wasn't the Marchessault signing that I think is damaging to this team. The one that I struggle with more than any is the Stamkos one.
Really?
Yeah, I think, at this stage of his career, the significant transition that needed to take place, Marchessault was a way better value play relatively. And that is the bigger, chew up of cap space to me that I look at and say that might have been able to be better spent elsewhere, especially since the Preds are also looking add a defenseman to add to the mix too.
Well, on that note, let's talk about one of the defensemen that is on the market and could be on the move soon. Frank, how close are we to a resolution in the David Jiricek situation?
Oh, I think relatively close is what I would call it. I think there was certainly an increased attention paid to David Jiricek yesterday in front offices based on the ones that I corresponded with. The best way I can frame up this situation right now is that I believe Columbus Blue Jackets GM Don Waddell has 5 to 6 concrete offers on the table that he's evaluating. I think they were relatively close to a deal at some point over the weekend. I think that they had made significant progress on Monday to the point where some thought a deal might get done or might have been nearing the finish line. But I know that with a young player of this stature, Don Waddell and his staff want to make sure that they're not leaving any stones unturned around the league. And it's been an interesting process because there's a number of teams that have wanted to get in the mix that, frankly, either I'm told haven't received a call back or have been politely, just told, hey, we don't think that this is a fit. We don't see you having the pieces that we're looking for. And so what is it exactly that the Columbus Blue Jackets are looking for? It's a player of similar stature, a young top end pick or prospect, or potentially a package of players that the Columbus Blue Jackets and their fan base can get excited about. We're talking about the number 6 overall pick from just 2 years ago. David Jiricek turns 21 soon. Right now, it certainly seems like a matter of when and not if Jiricek is going to be on the move, but what are the teams that we're talking about that have been in the mix over the last number of days? There seems to be lots of thought that the Minnesota Wild are one of the front runners for Jiricek at this point. Not entirely sure what that package would look like. I think the Philadelphia Flyers have been involved. I think at varying points, the Pittsburgh Penguins have as well. Kyle Dubas, I believe, traveled to go see David Jiricek play on Sunday. Those are the sort of 3 teams that I would circle around, but I don't think you can count out the San Jose Sharks or potentially the Buffalo Sabres. I think there's been a whole group of teams that have been right there in the mix.
And we'll see if we get a resolution sooner rather than later on that. Before we get to our big segment today and our pal Rob Rossi, a little smoke, fire, or false alarm for you, Frank, on a couple of situations around the league, starting with the New York Rangers. Some talk that they may be looking or willing to really shake up that roster. Smoke or fire? Is this legit trade talk, or is this maybe a GM trying to just throw a little grenade into the room and say, hey, wake up, boys?
I think that this is more smoke than fire. Look, I don't doubt for 1 second that the Rangers are willing and or intrigued about the possibility of giving this team a jolt. I don't think there's any messaging involved here because I don't believe that this information has emanated from the New York Rangers specifically. I think this comes from other teams that Chris Drury's had dialogue with. So the fact that he's talked to others would indicate that there is certainly some validity to it. I think when you look at some of the players that have been mentioned, Jacob Trouba, Chris Kreider, like these are still really impactful pieces. And I know that a lot of Ranger fans, including our pal Johnny Lazarus, would seem to indicate that the sky is falling. If you didn't catch Johnny's sort of late night dark video that he posted last night, basically sobbing about the current state of the Rangers. Look, I get why people are frustrated, but let's think big picture here. They're 12-7-1. They've been one of the best teams in the league the last few years. They've got arguably the best goalie in the game. And yes, he needs a new contract. And yes, Artemi Panarin is next year entering the final year of his deal and potential to sign an extension this summer. These are big, significant changes that we're talking about. And I think that is there interest in Trouba and Kreider? For sure there would be. But I sense maybe we're talking about one player that could be on the move here, not a wholesale change of core, because I also just don't know how realistic that is. They're committed to a lot of these guys.
Yeah, the cap hits are high. Trouba and Kreider both with 15-team no trade lists as well. Just quickly on Shesterkin, pending UFA. He is in the final year of his deal.
Yeah, I was talking about Panarin.
Oh, sorry, Panarin. Yeah, okay. My apologies. Last one I got for you before we get to our big segment. Artem Zub goes out for the Senators, and all of a sudden there's some talk that Ottawa may be looking for a defenseman. Smoke, fire, false alarm.
No, I think there's fire there, but it's not only on a defenseman. I mentioned on the DFO rundown yesterday with Jason Greger that the Sens are also looking to shake up their forward group as well in a potential forward swap. I think one of the teams that they've been in dialogue with has been the Philadelphia Flyers. I mentioned that look, there's a bunch of guys that I think are up for a change of scenery from the Flyers. I think Morgan Frost, Bobby Brink, Joel Farabee, to a lesser extent, Tyson Forster. They're all guys that you could see on the move at some point in time. And I think the Sens going back, the other direction, one of the big names that had been talked about was Josh Norris. Now, I don't think the Flyers have a ton of interest in Josh Norris. I think that contract with the term and also his injury history has been tough. But the point being, I think the Sens are open and willing to do some different things. And sending out one of those guys that has some security could potentially be that shot across the bow that this team might need.
Interesting stuff. As always, trade market continues to get a little bit hotter. Remember, there is a roster freeze coming up right around Christmas too. So maybe a little bit of urgency from some teams in the next 3-4 weeks here. Let's continue along with the show and talk about the other side of that Phil Tomasino trade. Let's go to the All 32 and Rob Rossi. The All 32 is brought to you by Fountain Tire. They treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle, whether it's new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle. Stop into Fountain Tire today and they'll sort you out. And right now you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, up until December 14th, plus an extra $50 on any service of $150 or more. Some restrictions apply. Visit fountaintire.com. Rob Rossi covers the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's a senior writer with The Athletic. Always a pleasure to welcome you into the show, Rob. And let's start with the recent news around the Penguins, the Phil Tomasino deal. Is that just, hey, they saw a young player they like, so they made the move? Or is that a signal that maybe Kyle Dubas and company are still in ad mode here and could be looking to do more?
I think they're in ad mode for the future. There's not a whole lot for this season that I would anticipate Kyle doing. I don't want to say this is unsalvageable, but let's be honest here. If Thanksgiving is the marker, and what is it, 77% of the teams that are in the playoffs on Thanksgiving make it, they have the 4th worst points percentage in the NHL. I mean, they're only probably going to be as many points out of the playoff spot as they were at Thanksgiving a year ago. But, they were 500 in points percentage last year. When you have a drop that they've had, it's going to be a situation where if there's a guy with talent, if there's a player out there that's young, especially a former 1st or 2nd round pick that just hasn't worked out, they're going to take a flyer on that guy, no pun intended, because there's not a whole lot in this system that excites the current management or even other trade partners, which is probably one of the reasons they won't get in on Jiricek.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to ask you, Rob. You wrote about David Jiricek and the potential of that today on The Athletic. When you think about the Pittsburgh Penguins system and what they might have to offer, how could they possibly make something like that work?
They can't. They just can't. I mean, it's my understanding that they told Don Waddell, you can have any prospect you want, including Rutger McGrarty, who they just made a big deal about acquiring for Brandon Yeager. And, Waddell was basically like, no, thanks. I got better things to consider. And by the way, that's about the biggest swing the Penguins can make. We're going to offer you our top prospect. I'm sure that a 1st round pick from the Penguins is much more valuable, even a 2nd round pick than Rutger McGrarty. But why would you give that up if you're Kyle Dubas? I mean, you've got a legitimate opportunity here to win the draft lottery. It's been 19 years since I've said that in Pittsburgh, but that's where they're at right now. So I don't think there is an offer they could make that would be a good one for the franchise, even to bring in a tantalizing prospect. And look, it's my understanding that one of the reasons they're interested in this deal is because they are trying to set up for a future without Chris Letang. That's not that they're necessarily looking to move him, but guys, like this is the situation nobody needs to speculate on. Next season, if Getty Malkin's contract ends, next season, Chris Letang's contract, or after next season, Chris Letang's contract becomes movable because right now he has full no trade clause. That doesn't mean it would be easy to move a player like that, but you can see what Kyle Dubas is thinking. Here's a giant of a right-hand shot defenseman. You know, maybe this is a guy worth taking a flyer on to see if he can be sort of the heir apparent. It's my understanding, Frank, maybe you've heard differently, that they don't necessarily view Jiricek as necessarily being ready right now, but a year and a half from now, I think they would have a hope he would be. But I don't think it matters because I just can't see a world in which Columbus trades that guy within the division to a team that's similarly positioned as they are, trying to get, assets for the future.
So you mentioned the Penguins have a legitimate shot at winning the draft lottery, and it's been 19 years since you could say that. I've known you almost that long, and I'm looking for some perspective on, is this the most lifeless you've seen the Penguins over this time?
It's most hopeless.
But even on the bench, like I'm just, look at Mike Sullivan. He's not even talking.
Yeah, I look. I think that's a fair observation. I go with hopeless because
it's Rob Rossi.
Well, right. I'm normally like a warm cherry pie for Thanksgiving, but I just feel like in the time that I've covered them, which dates back to like the season before Crosby arrived, so the pre-lockout season, there was always hope. You could sell hope in Pittsburgh. At one point early on, that hope was Fleury's here, Malkin's coming, then Crosby, the draft lottery, they won that, right? Then it was Jordan Staal. You got these three centers. Nobody has that. And then they won so quickly, right? And, they had arguably the two best centers in the game for 10 years. And, the expectation was like so high that if they won a round or two, ownership was a little skittish at the time because like, oh, we should be doing more. And even up until the beginning of this decade, there was still this hope that was like, they're not so old that they can't get it right and make another run. That doesn't exist anymore. They didn't bring Kyle Dubas in to win right away, which is why his first summer is so puzzling. And to be honest, if you look at it objectively right now, he probably did more damage that first summer to make winning anytime soon unlikely, because I don't know how you get rid of Tristan Jarry or Ryan Graves or the Erik Karlsson deal. I don't blame him as much for the Erik Karlsson deal because that was a big swing, but you can't miss on a big swing like that when you miss on those other things. And my point is there isn't a lot of hope right now. And it's a fan base that, look, people will always say what they want to say about the Pittsburgh market. When you have tickets that are second highest in the U.S., when you have concessions, I went down and got a bag of Sour Patch Kids the other day from like a concession stand because honestly, I needed sugar to just stay awake through the game. And it was close to $7 for a bag of Sour Patch Kids, and not a big one, like a regular size bag. So when you're charging concessions that are crazy for a market that isn't exactly, this isn't New York, this isn't Philadelphia, this isn't like, the wages aren't great here. When you're not selling hope, you're not going to get more than 16,000 people into the building every night unless you're giving something away. So I don't put this on the fans. Frankly, the ownership and the management need to do a better job of detailing what a plan is for this to get right, because it's going to be after Crosby. At this point, that's clear. Whether Crosby plays somewhere else, I don't think that's going to happen. But no matter the case, they're not going to be ready by the end of his current extension to compete. They're just not.
So that actually perfectly brings me to my next question, which is, there seems to be some thought that Kyle Dubas can sell ownership on this idea. Hey, I can do a quick retool, 2 years and we'll be back. So my question is, isn't that kind of what he already tried to do? And then what would be the thought process of like, why why do you think that would be possible?
I think he has sold ownership on that. I think he's now trying to sell ownership on that didn't work, so we need to go in a different direction. And I actually think there's more appetite from that for ownership. They don't want to come out and use the word rebuild. They view it as a bad message. But
well, you can't rebuild because these guys are all under contract.
Right. But look, Kyle got 7 years for a reason. It wasn't just because they loved him. It was because like he kind of knew this was probably going to be a bigger lift. The problem is that first summer turned a 7-year project into probably something closer to 9, unless they get really lucky and like win the lottery back-to-back years. And both of those guys end up being franchise type players.
Or you trade your pick for Erik Karlsson and he becomes Sam Dickinson, who has 2 points a game in the OHL.
Yeah, right. So like here's the thing. The Penguins are in a position where they could have made any mistakes when they got rid of Ron Hextall and Brian Burke. And they have. And now we're in the situation where the darkness was always going to come. But as I like to say, this time of year in Pittsburgh, you wake up to no sunlight and you return home to no sunlight. And that's kind of what it's like covering the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Well, you're talking to a guy who hosts the show from Edmonton, so good luck with that.
What is you?
Can always be worse, Frank. It can always be worse.
Yeah.
Always appreciate your time, Rob. Thanks for popping on.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Moving along to our Daily Faceoff inbox question, brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. More than 85 locations across Canada through Charm and their sister brands. Check out their large selection of lab-grown diamonds, mined diamonds, and don't pay until next year with their instant in-store financing, OAC. Go to charmdiamondcenters.com to learn more. We were talking about trading for a D-man, and we had SK, who's a Jets fan, pop in. Do the Jets want to go out and get a D with Sandberg and his broken foot? They desperately need a top D, says SK. Frank, did maybe their good start, though, buy them some time to say, we don't need to like jump and replace a guy who's just hurt?
Yeah, and I would say the other part of that is if I'm in the Winnipeg Jets front office and I look at the additions that we made last year, which were pretty significant, Sean Monahan, Tyler Toffoli, etc., I don't know how much that helped. And you gave up decent assets to do it. Is maybe less more for this team. I know that sounds funny to say, but like, look at what Hellebuck is doing. Maybe just stay the course.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Let's move along to our daily bets for our friends at Bet365. Use the promo code NATION when you download the app. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I got one pick for tonight. It's a small slate in the NHL. A couple of shot prop unders, just because I was looking at the numbers and the trends. Cole Caulfield has not hit his shot prop in 7 consecutive games. He's been 2 or less. You get plus 128 on his under. Elias Lindholm has missed in 5 of 6 games. You get plus 128 on his under as well. Play them together, play them separate. I think there's good value here on a couple of guys who are struggling to hit their shot props. And with that, Frank, let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. We started talking lightning. We'll finish with a little bit of lightning. And Geeky's pregame routine is something, Frank.
Someone's going to need to explain this to me. Like, I get the idea of giving yourself a shower, but like it's the knee and thigh thing here that really that's weird. I don't know what else to say other than that, because look, I don't know what it's like with you, but like whenever my gear was super wet, everything just feels heavy.
Yeah, like the shin pads and all of that, like you'd be soaked. I don't get it. The only
waterlogged, like water would be running down into your skates. Like I don't understand that at all. And maybe like to wake up a little bit, sure, you do a little on your face, a little squirt down the back. Okay, sold. Like great. The back of the knee. First off, who hoses off the back of their knee? I feel like this is a Seinfeld episode, but I don't know what to say. That's definitely one of the weirder things going in the NHL right now. I'm just going to leave it right there.
Mike says grip on the back of your knees, Mike. We'll give Joe the final word. He's on WTF. Yeah, exactly, Joe. WTF.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, that's a wrap on today's edition of the show. We will be back tomorrow once again at noon Eastern. Everybody in the YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button before you go. Help us out with that pesky little YouTube algorithm, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.